Hello everyone, it is Peter Sam and our Gauge Engine here. So we've reached the final one of these, the last time I talk about these seasons and this era of the show. Today I'll be breaking down what I believe the official order of seasons are from worst to best. Obviously you can probably guess where some seasons will end up, but I also think I have a few surprises up my metaphorical sleeve that might upset a few of you. The way in which I've worked out scores for each season is by working out the mean score of each season, adding up every episode's score and dividing it by how many episodes were in the season. Simple maths. Let's start with number 12, shall we? Number 12, Season 12. Is it even a surprise? Season 12 aired in 2008 and started using CGI. I still count it in the model era because there's simply more model things than there are CGI things, but it is shockingly awful and could easily fit in with the rest of the Miller era too. Many of the episodes here are just plain old dull and terrible, so much so that the definitive bad episode of the season was put in 8th place. The CGI faces used on the engines are awful and ruin these episodes all the more than they already were. The Three Strikes formula was prevalent in, I think, every single episode, which is probably why it sucks so much. In earlier seasons, at least a few episodes within each season didn't use this overused excuse of a structure, and some of the ones that did were at least enjoyable for other reasons. Here we have maybe 7 that I can bring myself to like, and 4 out of those that I actually find decent. Another reason Season 12 ended up down at the bottom is because of the crunch in numbers of episodes. Instead of the usual 26, Season 12 has 20 episodes. This, especially when concerning my method of how to rank all of these, really hindered it. Not that it would probably be this much, but a maximum of 30 points were lost because of those 6 episodes. That is a lot. One thing I will say I am quite pleased to see is that the production team brought in all of the props and tried fitting them all into these episodes. One thing I will say I am quite pleased to see is that the production team brought in all of the props and tried fitting them all into the episodes, as if it's one last hurrah for those props before everything changed to CGI. In the end, this season will be one I revisit not very often. I'll probably end up skipping quite a few of the episodes anyway because a lot of them have no true effort or meaning put behind them. Number 11, Season 11. A lot of people have said that Season 11 is a good hit season. I disagree heavily with this. Don't get it twisted, it is a far cry from the awful and ugly Season 12, but this one has like 6 good episodes in a row and then just dropped the ball for the rest of the season until the end, where they had like 2 or 3 good ones. That is not a good season. It was so clear when they just ran out of ideas, and that is really sad to me, especially when it had such a good start. It gave us hope, it gave us promise, and then this season let us down tremendously. There are still good elements in this season though, and I will rack those off now, although there aren't many. Visually, Season 11 is very strong. There's this yellow tint that's been used on all of the episodes when editing, and whilst it doesn't add a whole lot, it does make the episodes look prettier. Although I don't think the visual aspect of a season is everything, as we'll see later, in a season so shit, every little helps. Also, the new characters here are either really good, really notorious, or both. With falls into both. He's a good character with quite a good concept, a unique job, and he's pretty iconic. He may not be quite all there personality wise, but everything else is really strong. Hector also falls into both. His design makes him so recognisable, and the role he plays within his episode is quite complex, which makes it really interesting. Billy is such a hated character in the fandom that it's almost a meme. That makes him very notorious, and as such you have to appreciate that. Finally, Madge is a really good character. She may not be iconic or notorious, but she is fun and has the most personality out of any of the other newbies. She's got a great design and has 2 really fun episodes which exploit both of her flaws in fun and creative ways. Season 11 at least had that going for it. It does have some fun and interesting things about it that keep it from sinking below Season 12. Season 11 at least has that going for it, and whilst I do think it's overrated as balls, number 10, Season 10. Are we sensing a pattern here? I do not agree with the amount of shit Season 10 gets. especially because a lot of people find Season 11 to be one of the better hit seasons. Like, what? Are you okay? Season 10 was definitely the start of a massive dip in quality, which really doesn't rise again until about Season 16. But come on, it's bad, but it's not that bad. It feels like there were more ideas, more fun episodes, and it seems as though more effort was put into it than Seasons 11 and 12. It still is bad, and I'd only watch the season again once in a blue moon, but we have a lot of good stuff here too. Sir Handel is reintroduced introduced as a much wiser engine. That's a fun new wrinkle for the guy. But it's not just Sir Handel that arrives, Fearless Freddy does too. While Sir Handel's introductory episode was just squeak, rattle and roll again, Freddy had an introductory episode that's unique and fun. But it's not just new characters that got good episodes, many recurring characters got such good episodes too. Gordon got It's Good to Be Gordon, Henry got Big Strong Henry, James got James the Second Best. It can be argued that the extra 2 episodes this season helped season 10 to get this far up, but at the same time, if the season was that terrible, the episodes would have gotten far worse than what they did. I just think this season's highly underrated, especially in comparison to season 11, and it deserves a bit more respect. Number 9. Season 8. Oh, and we've broken the pattern, sorry lads. This season was the start of the hit era and it really showed how different the show would become. But I don't think that necessarily made it bad. Yes, it has some lows and it is awful in comparison to the previous season, season 7, but I can say this is the first season on the list that I have some level of love for. It's objectively bad, I agree, but again there are quite a few good aspects about it. I like how tight-knit it is with its characters, despite how repetitive it can get. But it does show us the new personalities of these engines and we get to know them as the season carries on. I love how the writers aren't used to the new style yet, so some actual good storytelling elements slip through the cracks like in Halloween. By the way, have you seen the Hit Era Writers Bible? That is fucking mental. Anyway, this season was fun despite its major hiccups. I'm looking at you, Thomas Emily and the Snowplow. If anything, I'd argue that makes it better. A turbulent season can sometimes be fun, especially if many fans argue on which episodes are bad and which are good. I'll definitely come back to it every once in a while though. Number 8, Season 9. By far the best hit season is, without a doubt, Season 9. Why? Because it feels like the most effort has been put into it, as it's the writer's first time with new characters and the narrow gauge engines. There's a lot of excitement with this season because of that, but I think the episodes are the most inventive. Duncan exploring an old mine, everyone getting the wrong idea about Neville, and Peter Sam being told the story of Proteus. These are all fun and interesting ideas and are nowhere near as bland as an average season 11 story, and less basic than an average season 8 story. Don't get me wrong, it is capable of some utter shit, but I think the highs here are at its highest. What I think lets it down the most is the amount of characters that are introduced, only for them to disappear and never be seen again. Neville, Molly, Dennis, Mighty Matt gets minor roles here and there, but they never get an episode again. This is disappointing but not surprising, as this is the crew's first time handling new characters. It's especially disappointing because most of these characters are pretty interesting, and would have made the focus of some very interesting episodes. Other than that though, this season is pretty good, with the obvious exceptions of the really bad episodes. Number 7, Season 1. I know, it's Season 1, the one that began it all, but it is the weakest classic season. Why? Well, for one, there's the low budget. I know that budget isn't everything, but it does help, and when your show is based around model locomotives that have eye and steam mechanisms and run on giant sets, budget helps quite a bit. The lack of budget means that shots where the rails move or the eyes look weird, or you can see blue tack and holes on the fat controller happen a lot, and it kind of takes it out of it for me. The sets are great, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of room for improvement. Also, some of the stories are kind of boring. Everyone knows these stories back to front, upside down and inside out, and that makes it a bit tedious upon rewatch. There are a lot of dialogue heavy episodes, and in comparison to later seasons where dialogue and action are more balanced, it can make the season drag a bit. I will give it this though, when the action does happen, it makes it all the more exciting. Season 1 can be fun, and it does have its moments, but I just think a lot of people give this season a lot more credit than it deserves. I'm not trying to shit on the season at all, because I really do enjoy it, but I think it is the weakest of the classic seasons fundamentally and with what stories make it up. Number 6, Season 2. Again, I bet you're shocked. But really, Season 2 for me suffers from similar problems that Season 1 did. There's more budget this time, which is good, but there are still a few too many dialogue-based episodes and some very dull stories. I'd say there's a lot more entertaining stories within there: Ghost Train, A Close Shave, Old Iron, the list goes on, but there are still some stinkers. I like how dynamic the camera movements are this season as opposed to the static ones that took up most of Season 1. The new characters are also really fun ones, whether I like them or they're beloved among the fandom. A lot of people love Duck, Donald and Douglas and Boko, etc. I really like Bill and Ben, Daisy and Diesel too. Even Trevor is a cool looking character despite him being fairly bland. This is a major improvement upon Season 1, but I do think there are still some problems. There are problems with goofs still. They're less noticeable now, but they're still there. And as I said, there are way too many dialogue heavy episodes. I'm not saying that's inherently bad, but when you've got season 5 around the corner with the explosions and the spooky shit and the fast paced stuff, when I compare the two, one's going to fall short. Again, I do like this season and I watched it a fair bit as a kid, but it pales in comparison. Number 5, season 6. Now this is obviously going to be the hot take that everyone hates me for in this video. I really like season 6 in all honesty. It may look very visually unappealing, but it's really funny. So instead of rambling on for a bit too long, here are some moments from the season that made me chuckle.
Thomas wanted to feel important too. He might choose me, he said hopefully.
Well, one thing's for sure, said Gordon. He won't choose Dirty Percy.
Don't call me Dirty Percy! So cranky that he swung his arm around. And dropped the pipes onto the tracks instead of the trucks. Whoops, said Cranky meekly. Bertie was excited when he saw Thomas flying down the track. Want a race, Thomas? Beat Bertie? Never mind.
Definitely a coloratura, said Gordon.
And he pulled! Help! Grease and oil! Hi, Gordon. Bye, Gordon.
Funny, right? Now yes, I cannot deny that the lows here are fucking low, but the highs are pretty good. An endearing story where Toby helps some poor lambs during frosty weather. A Gordon story where he gets conceited and is handed his just desserts. And of course, my favourite story of all time where Percy is dealt a bad hand and ends up crashing through a chocolate factory before getting the washdown he so craved. The vibe season 6 gives off feels like it's in a more transitional phase between the very classic seasons and the more mainstream hit seasons, and it feels nice, like a very good mix. The new characters this season are also either really interesting or would go on to be iconic characters later. Salty is iconic, Harvey has an interesting design and would go on to be brought back into the Brenner era. Elizabeth is such an interesting character too, and so are the pack with their two-parter. Such great characters were brought into this season, and it's just such a fun season overall. Number 4, season 3. Wow, what a season. I never gave this season as much credit previously and made it out to be one that I liked, but not all that much. A year on, I can definitively say that this season rocks. There's a lot of solid episodes here and some truly heartwarming and spectacular ones. As with every season, there are some stinkers. There's no season on the list without them, because believe it or not, the classic series isn't perfect. One good turn, The Trouble with Mud, Thomas Gets Bumped, there's a few of them out there. But again, the highs are really high, and the really good highs here are all good for different reasons. Escape, a daring adventure with a satisfying conclusion. Henry's Forest, an emotional masterpiece that gives some new depth to our favourite number 3. All at Sea, an episode with rich morals and a touching ending. I think the best thing about season 3 though is the set design. The new brighter look with great designs such as the beach set with the rowing boat in the foreground, or the grimy dim yards of the other railway, or even the technical water sets of the harbour, or even the china clay pits that collapse in Heroes. I could go on and on. I also love the mix between stories made up by Allcroft and Mitten and the Audrey stories that we also have. They blend well and make the season all the more interesting. If you've seen my season 3 re-rank, you'll have seen in those rankings that the Audrey stories are the ones that end up getting rated higher overall when compared to the ones that were made by Allcroft and Mitten. But probably the worst part of this season is the narration. Angelus here isn't in his prime yet and he didn't quite find his footing until later in the season, but he still has some good lines. I think the way I describe season 3 is Thomas. When I think about the show, that season 3 style with the bright colour and the authenticity of it all is really what comes to mind, which is such a testament to the season. You're a good one, season 3. A really good one. Number 3, season 7. Now I know a lot of you are gonna go ape at me, but I genuinely have so much appreciation for this season. There's so much good stuff here, and as I've said before, I genuinely can't find a bad episode in there. The worst episodes, Trusty Rusty and A Bad Day at Castle Rock, got 1.5, a never before seen feat that surprised me too. A lot of characters were given episodes here, and whilst I don't think all of them were amazing, it did demonstrate how much the crew still cared. Hell, my original ranking of the season was probably completely different. Pretty sure it was anyway. Alongside all of these characters getting episodes, other new characters were brought in and they got to appear in episodes too. This season gave us Emily, an engine that lives on in infamy to this day. We also have my best boy Fergus with that flywheel. It's a shame he only had 2 or 3 episodes there. Murdoch got an episode too and he's alright. Then we have Arthur, a clearly great character with depth and goals and personality, probably the best character this season introduced us to. Then we have Spencer, such an icon amongst the fandom with a fun personality and who we always loved to see, and he was brought to life in this season. These guys are some of the best new characters. Hell, this season brought back Baldry and gave an episode to Rhaenyra for once. Plus, the music slaps pretty hard. It's not amazing or anything, but it has its moments. This season can be heartwarming and sweet. It can be a fun roller coaster ride, it can be spooky, it can be funny, and most of all, it can still, at least somewhat, capture that essence of Thomas the Tank Engine and friends we all know and love. So, we have 2 seasons left. You know which ones. But which one will go here as the runner-up, and which one will be crowned the victor? It's time to find out. Here we go. Number 2. Season 5. This season was such a good one, an amazing watch, don't get me wrong. We had some great episodes this season, true masterpieces, Toby and the Flood, Haunted Henry, Stepney Gets Lost, all absolutely amazing for various reasons. This season had a real atmosphere in all forms. The eerie feeling of night, the bright cheerful day, the danger of the storms, the cold bite of winter, but it's so good. However, it is number 2 for a reason, and there is a reason. There's a pretty big one that affects a number of episodes within the season, and that is the multiple interweaving stories in some episodes. Classic series episodes are 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and to have multiple unrelated things happening at once is a bit jarring because it all feels a bit quick. Nothing ever feels focused on in the episodes like that. In the Brenner era episodes, it's a bit more forgivable because there's a longer runtime, but here, it's a bad idea, and something that thankfully only happened in season 5. Episodes like Thomas Percy and Old Slowcoach, Gordon and the Gremlin, and Thomas and the Rumours all had these dual stories that would connect at the end and give us some stupid ass ending oftentimes. Like Sir Topham calling a dog Gremlin, like that's so dumb. Regardless, this season had some definite amazing episodes and is an unforgettable experience when you watch, with its faster storytelling and fast-paced episodes. A definite favourite for many, and one I have a lot of love for. So we've arrived at our number 1 spot, and if you've been following along and taking note, you'll know which season is left. Number 1, Season 4. The best season, in my opinion, will always be Season 4. It has such great visuals paired with some great Audrey stories. This season, to many, is the most beautiful of any season, and I would have to agree. Look at it, it's great! Now I know that a lot of people don't like how separated this season is, with the first half purely dedicated to narrow gauge episodes and the second half going back to the standard gauge characters. Personally, I do actually like this format as we get to know the narrow gauge characters a lot better than if the stories were dotted around randomly, and the long-running story flows a lot better. Now to talk about the standard gauge episodes. Now yes, some of them are pretty bad, but as I've said before, no season is perfect. There will always be bad parts. But personally, a good chunk of the standard gauge episodes are fun to watch in my opinion. Bullseyes, Toad Stands By, Bowled Out. There are some strong stories here, and while some of them are just there to fill previously missed gaps and mess with the continuity of everything, with where this season's strengths lie, they're as close to perfect as you can get. The stories, the visuals, the character dynamics, the music, the narration. Now, I'm not a US dub person here, but George Carlin kills it. This is my favourite line throughout his entire time on the show.
Old engines can't pull trains like the young ones can. They can if they're mended, Old Faithful, smiled his driver. And that's what's going to happen to you. You deserve it.
What a season. So we've come to the end of me talking about the model seasons for a long while. It feels good after about a year of going on about it. So what comes next? Well, you can join me on the 15th of January for Season 17 Ranked. That's right, I'll be taking a look at the Brenner era this year, and I hope you'll continue to join me for that journey. So, for one final time with these models, I've been Peter Sam, you've been you, and I'm going to contemplate how eventually I'll have to look at the Miller era. Not looking forward to when that happens. Anyway, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.